We came here 2 days ago because we need help. We don't know what to do and how to live. Currently, we're planning to find a house in the UK. We don't have anything in the UK, but just people who are willing to help us.
That was a 15-year-old Ukrainian girl with her mother at a shelter in Poland, along with thousands of other refugees. They don't have a plan for where they go next. 2.2 million Ukrainians have fled to Poland alone, a country stretched so thin, having taken in by far the most of the 3.7 million Ukrainians who have been forced to leave their homes. President Biden, as we told you, will meet with Ukrainian refugees before he leaves Poland tomorrow. The U.S. has now pledged to take in 100,000 refugees as well. Joining us now, UNICEF spokesperson James Elder and former Ambassador Michael McFaul is back with us. James, you know how this works. Talk to us about the complexities of getting refugees settled, and where do you think the preparations are now? And are your folks in the U.S. working for the possibility that there could be an influx of Ukrainian immigrants to the United States, Ukrainian refugees?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we just have to look at, as you saw with that 15-year-old girl, what everyone's been through, where their journey started. And it's important that governments keep considering, the path that's been. It probably started in a bunker somewhere in Kiev or Kharkiv, and now they've got to that point finally. And whilst we're starting miraculously to see the numbers slow from extraordinary mind-boggling numbers, the needs are growing. So, yes, we see the announcement from the USA, and of course that's welcome, that sort of swift decision-making by governments, because, as you rightly say, 2 million plus in Poland in just a month is almost unprecedented. So countries around the world are going to have to show the same sort of, open hands and big-heartedness in absorbing so many people who, again, didn't want to have to leave their country.
Couple of questions, Ambassador. Put in perspective, 100,000 refugees. I mean, it's hard to know how many would want to come right to the United States, because many have said they want to stay in Europe and be close in case they can go back to their country. But put that number in perspective, but also how quickly do you think the U.S. and many organizations that have said that they would be willing to help place refugees, how quickly could they get geared up to do that?
Well, I applaud President Biden for announcing it. 100,000 is better than what it was before. I want that number to go up, and I want them to be processed as fast as possible. That is a very key point that you just brought up, Chris. I have a fellow from Ukraine at my institute at Stanford right now. His parents are in Krakow. They fled first from Crimea, by the way, in 2014. He's from Crimea. Then they to Kiev, and then they had to flee Kiev, and they're in Krakow. 4 weeks ago, when they first arrived at the beginning of the war, they were told their first interview would be in August to seek asylum to join their son here in California. This is welcome news that they're going to speed that process up. Those kinds of people need to move out quickly, in part to help our allies, the Poles, so that those people that have places to go can get out as fast as possible, as this heroic country, Poland, does what it is doing right now for all those people fleeing from Ukraine today.
And James, how can an organization like UNICEF, which is very experienced in things like this, how can they help facilitate that? And what are you doing right now?
Well, look, our role, Chris, is very much around helping those people who are moving between the countries, helping them as they go, between Poland and Ukraine, whether we're talking about traumatic support, stress, food, nutrition. When we talk about people moving country to country, it gets complicated, but that is the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights. What UNICEF is doing is, as people make this perilous journey, so whether they're on the border there with Poland or they're in Ukraine or Romania, it's about getting them support. And increasingly, that is not just food and blankets. It's starting to thankfully warm up a little bit here. That's traumatic. That's stress support as well. The longer this goes on, the longer children are bearing the brunt, and they are bearing the brunt of this war, the longer they bear the brunt, the more likely we are to get suddenly a generation of Ukrainian kids who know war. We can't afford that. Europe can't afford that. Ukraine can't afford that. So an organisation like UNICEF does a lot of trauma support for these children in Poland, here where I'm in Ukraine, of course, Chris, the fastest and safest way out of this for children is, of course, for the attacks to stop.
You know, at the beginning of this hour, we, James, had a sound from a mother who said, you know, her child asked her if she was going to see the next birthday. I assume that you, working with many of these children, as shocking as that is to hear, it's not unusual. And what should folks who are going to open their homes and their hearts, frankly, and whether it's in Poland or whether it's in the United States, what do they need to know? What do they need to expect when these families who have been through a trauma, who may still, frankly, have loved ones or back in Ukraine or have lost loved ones already, what should folks know?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. I think it all comes down to trying as best as we can to put ourselves in that situation. The people you see in those images a month ago were mechanics and physios and teachers and so on. And now, as you say, they've not just left a country in war. They've not just left their homes and their livelihoods. They've invariably left their husbands, and children have watched as their dad has spoken to them and said, you know, you're going to Poland and I'm staying here. So there's a degree of stress and trauma. So anyone, of course, you know, big-heartedness, just trying to get a sense of what these people have endured, but remembering as well that history, be it in the United States, be it in Europe, be it where I'm from Australia, speaks very loudly that migrants, refugees, ultimately bring an enormous amount, culturally, economically, to a society. So I think empathy, tolerance, and trying to put ourselves in their shoes just for a few meters of this journey that they've been making.
And let me ask you, Ambassador, about a couple of things that I've heard raised as concerns. One in particular that, well, yes, of course, the Ukrainians need help, but what about refugees from other countries that have been waiting and hoping to come into the United States? And does there need to be, if not a wholesale, a widespread reassessment of this country, of the acceptance of refugees, and how that can and should happen?
You know, those are very valid questions. I get them from my Syrian colleagues and friends every day. I think it should be a moment when we reevaluate the entire way that we deal with refugees. Our system has not been working very well, and this crisis sometimes creates opportunities to do things a better way. The second thing I would say, however, is that, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. Just because we did it wrong in the past, mean that should be used as a reason not to do the right thing at this moment, at this incredibly horrific moment in European history.